Right, I'm back, I guess. This feels a bit weird. First video in my room that I'm recording in about 3 weeks. But welcome guys to a brand new video. Today, as you can see from the title, I'm going to be talking about F1 2017, more specifically the handling, because that's all I can really talk about at the moment. So, just in case you missed it, I did a vlog where I talked about F1 2017 and just vlogged my whole experience of going to that. So check out that video in case you haven't seen it already. It's a very long one, 43 minutes and a few seconds. At the end of that video, I did talk about the handling briefly, but in today's video, I wanted to go into it more in depth and just talk about it again, just in case some of you guys didn't make it to the end of the video. So yeah, I'll be going more in depth and talking about the inner facets of the handling model on F1 2017. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this because I have a lot of points to cover over the course of this video. So if you don't know, the 2017 F1 cars are supposedly going to be 3 to 4 seconds faster than their 2016 counterparts. So you can imagine being that much faster than the previous year, you're going to find a lot more lap time. Where is that going to come from? It's going to come from in the corners because the amount of downforce produced by these 2017 F1 cars is just significantly higher than the previous year. I think David Greco told me the current F1 cars are producing something like 2,600, 2,700 kilos worth of downforce, whereas previously the cars were running around 2,000, 2,100. I don't know the exact figures, but it's about that range. So there is a significant amount of downforce that is being generated by the cars. So you can imagine you can carry so much more speed into mid and high speed corners that it makes some corners in particular, like Turn 1 at Silverstone or Copse, flat out, or corners that were, you know, a slight lift, easy flat out now. So yeah, the old Turn 1 at Silverstone, at the moment it's a slight lift for me. Maybe in the right car with the right setup you could absolutely pile drive it through there flat out without having to really lift off, but at the moment I don't quite have the, let's say, confidence to really push the boundaries as of yet. But maybe when I get more comfortable in the game, that might be a thing. But yeah, high speed corners, it's much more fun and enjoyable. In terms of braking zones, coming into them, the stopping distances more or less are fairly similar. I feel like you can lock up easier on 2017. That's something that I really had to struggle with or come to terms with initially when playing the game for my first hour or two. But after I found that limit of adhesion before causing lockups, I was fine. It just took a few laps or a few, you know, yeah, just depending on track to track. But with a stock setup, I found I was able to minimize the lockups fairly quickly. So yeah, lockups are going to punish you more this year. I feel like on 2016 you can lock up into every corner, and that was the fastest way to break into a corner. You can't do that this year. If you lock up too much, if you don't fix that up or rectify it before the apex, you're going to go straight on or at least miss the corner by quite a while. So yeah, braking is quite important. So too with trail braking. It's always been an important factor of F1 games in getting that apex speed and just lap time in general. So moving on from the braking, I feel the F1 cars this year feel much heavier, and they certainly are heavier than last year's cars, but they definitely feel like they're heavier now as well, just with the way that the force feedback works. I mentioned it in the last video, but the force feedback is so strong now. I was using the exact same wheel that I use at home on 100% you know, force feedback strength. And when I came home, to be honest, I'll be honest here, when I first played F1 2017, I didn't notice too much difference in the handling, but gradually over time I noticed these subtle differences. But I especially noticed it when I came back to 2016 and drove in 2016 cars. Same wheel, same setup that I have at home. It was crazy how much difference there was. The car just felt so light, and so it was almost like the 2016 handling was so much more simple, and it's hard to explain, like a lot more arcadey, whereas the 2017 handling feels so much more advanced. It feels there's so much more weight and purpose about the car and where you place it and how you go about going through corners and the way that the force feedback reacts to bumps and curbs and everything like that. It's so different, and it took me until I got home to try career mode on 2016 to really appreciate how far the physics or more or less the force feedback has come versus 2016 and 2017. I did talk about this as well. The track surfaces feel very, very different. Track to track, Sochi feels like a pool table. It is so flat, so smooth. It gives this really good sensation of grip. But you come to places like Spain, and the track is just so bumpy. The wheel is just shaking in your hands, and it's wanting to jerk left or right, and you just can't do anything about it. It's just, it gives the tracks and the track surfaces a lot of character, a lot of personality. So it helps distinguish track to track, the sense of grip and the bumps and everything a whole lot more. So yeah, I found that was really cool. Just trying out the entirety of the 2017 season and seeing what the track surfaces would do to the car. Like Brazil, going up to the start-finish line, there's some bumps there and a bit of undulation, and if you go over a particular bump, it would really jerk the wheel left or right, and you really felt that on 100% force feedback strength. I can't say anything for the pad, I didn't try that all too much, but for the wheel, if your force feedback system is strong enough, I have a Thrustmaster TX, you turn that up to 100, like I did in testing, then you're definitely going to feel that. And hopefully that stays in the full game. Of course, with everything I'm talking about right now, there's lots of things that could change between now and whenever the game comes out later in the year. So I feel like Cody's are very close to the mark in terms of the handling. It feels very nice. A huge step up on 2016, even though the 2016 handling in itself was awesome. The handling has really come in leaps and bounds ever since 2015, and 2017 is just a refinement of 2016, which of course was a refinement on 2015. So really looking forward to how you guys make of the handling. Of course, with any game, there are going to be some slight imperfections and things that still can be improved. One area, of course, is first gear. I feel like coming into hairpins, you can just jam the car into first gear and kick the back end out, slide, and just launch off the corner a little bit too quickly. I feel like it's a little bit cheap. It's just a poor method of gaining time, where you shouldn't really be doing that. You should be driving the car to the absolute limit. You shouldn't feel like you have to slide the car in to get a better exit out of a corner. It shouldn't work like that. And I feel like part of it is attributed to second gear being a little bit too tall. One example that really springs to mind is the hairpin at China. The second last corner, second gear just feels too tall, too understeery. So you jam it into first gear, you kick the back end out, you slide, get on the power early, and that's the fastest way. You can gain about 3 or 4 tenths out of that corner. A lot of us found that when we were doing time trial, doing second gear and then shifting down into first. You just found so much time, and the exit speed was crazy. So that's one area that we have identified, and hopefully that's going to be fixed for the full version of the game. Yeah, there's just, like I said, with any game, there's going to be imperfections, and hopefully that can be fixed. Another area which I personally didn't agree with was the second to third gear shift in a long corner. The back end kicks out quite a bit, and you don't really see that in real life. An F1 car going through a long corner, they shift up a gear. You don't see them lose the back end like crazy and have to lift off the throttle and try and catch a slide all of a sudden. I just feel like that's a huge element of this game, and also in 2016 that was quite apparent. Another example is going through the middle sector in Shanghai, going from second to third gear, the left-hander, just before you come up to the third sector split. That area is just so hard to balance the traction and the rear end of the car, especially when you shift up to third gear. It happens in other gears as well, but it's more prominent in second to third. So yeah, that's two areas of the handling where I'd like to see some improvements. Hopefully, I don't know if anything is possible at this stage of the game, but hopefully that can be rectified. Especially the first gear thing. That is a little bit too cheap, and I feel like people might abuse that in the game if that's still a thing. So moving on to more light-hearted things, going just back to the basics of the handling of the 2017 cars. Wider tyres, more downforce, mechanical grip is absolutely crazy. So with that, the car is easier to drive on the traction. It's I'd say coming out of corners, it's harder to lose the back end. You can smash down the throttle just a little bit easier, but it's manageable. I feel like the fastest way to go through a corner is to get on the power as early as you can, you'll get into a little bit of a slide, and you've got to catch that. But the risk versus reward is there for you to really get on the power early and try and catch that slide. You'll gain time by doing that as opposed to trying to be smoother on the throttle, if that makes sense to you guys. But in general, because the tyres are so much wider, more downforce, more mechanical grip, you can have a little bit more rear traction at lower speed. I'm not sure if I mentioned this earlier, but you can shift down the gears a little bit faster versus 2016. But there are methods in which it discourages you from doing that, and I can't talk about those yet, unfortunately. So if you like to shift down the gears fast, it's quite satisfying to do that, but there are going to be consequences which I can't talk about until later on, when the game is a little bit more finalized. Moving on to the slipstream. In 2016, very powerful. It was so potent. If you were following a car that was 5 or so tenths faster than you, you can actually stay with them, so long as you stay within the slipstream window or stay within that DRS window as well. And you could stay behind them for a few laps or maybe half the race or something like that, as long as you didn't make a mistake. The slipstream was so powerful that it would keep you with that car for quite a long time, and it made things frustrating if you overtook a car, then to find that the car that you overtook stays with you for a very long time, and it's very hard to shake off that slipstream and kind of pull away from the car behind you. But I feel like this year, I don't know for certain, but I feel like the slipstream at this stage is less noticeable, so that's good. It's going to make for more satisfying racing. Say like in a career mode or something like that, you won't see AI just fly past you on the straight because the slipstream is so powerful. And I think that was in place on 2016 because the AI had a hard time overtaking. So if they've made the slipstream less noticeable, maybe they have more confidence in the AI this year, so that can only be a good thing. Good for league racing, because that means if you're actually faster than someone, you can pull away and not worry about them sticking in your slipstream and going for a dive bomb because they get impatient because they can't get in front of you. So I feel like on the overall basis of things, that's good. One area which Codemasters they placed a lot of emphasis or importance on during testing week was assist versus no assist. They really wanted to get our take on that and see if it was balanced, more so than previous years. People at Codemasters said that the assist system they had in place was actually too perfect, and it was actually helping decent drivers who were running assists. It was allowing them to be too competitive and too fast, to the point where no assist users actually couldn't really compete with those guys, and the assist runners were actually faster. So it's something about ABS and half traction control being faster than no assists, and using exploits in the setup or something like that. But as far as we could tell, I feel like they've nerfed the assists a little bit. But I don't want everyone to start panicking. They're not going to make assists harder to use or harder to drive. In fact, I felt like, well, Scott Into the Barrier was testing assist versus no assist, and he tried medium traction control, and he actually felt that medium traction control was too easy to drive with. He felt like there wasn't enough of a step up from full traction to half traction and then to no traction. The half traction was just too easy to use. It was almost like using full traction. So yeah, the point of the assists and balancing them out is not to make assist runners, not to punish them, not to make it harder to use, just to make sure that they're not ridiculously fast because they use assists, or because semi-competent drivers use assists to keep up and even be faster than people with no assists who are actually really quick. In the overall balance of things, I felt like as the games have gone on, I've actually got slower in open lobbies and stuff. I felt like more people online were starting to beat me, and I couldn't really explain why. It wasn't until recently where I've started switching off assists. I've noticed that people have gone from beating me to being very, very average. So, like Lee Mather said, I feel like the assist system that they've had in place has just been too perfect, and it's allowed people who are, fairly decent drivers, it allows them to exploit assists to be faster than people who are genuinely really quick without assists. So hopefully that can be fixed up, and we can still retain that balance of assist runners still being able to race with people in the public who have no assists. You just need to have that little bit of a benefit towards people who turn off the assists. maybe just bog down people who use traction control or something like that, or make the ABS system increase the stopping distances. And I think that's what's actually happened with 2017. The stopping distances with ABS on have been increased ever so slightly. So you'll find that if you can manage no ABS, you can brake later, you can brake harder and stop the car quicker, but you have to deal with lockups. So that's the kind of system that Codemasters are working towards, and of course that's still a moving target with every F1 game as the physics change every year, and hopefully the assist versus no assist debacle or debate can be put to bed. Hopefully it can be realistic and balanced between all users. I've got one final point now to make about the handling of F1 2017, everything that I remembered off the top of my head, but that is tyre wear. I did a 50% race in Melbourne. This was actually my first race I did on the game in career mode. I felt like the tyre wear was, well, based on the strategy, I did a one-stop at Melbourne. I used the soft compound tyres and also the mediums, I believe. Or it might have been softs and super softs, I'm not entirely sure, but with the tyres, I think they're supposed to be a little bit more durable this year. But one thing I did notice that towards the end of stints was the car became much harder to drive. Like, I actually got physical oversteer in high-speed corners. So going through the left-right chicane, middle sector in Melbourne, you have that right-hander just after. So I'd go through there, and on the exit of that right-hander, the back end would start like swapping on me, and I was like, hang on, what's this? I've never really felt this before. I wasn't really getting up on curbs. I wasn't flooring down the throttle too much. It was genuine oversteer from the tires, the rear tires just going off. So I don't know if that's going to be a thing in the final version of the game, but that was really interesting to experience that, because yeah, in the past you don't really experience natural oversteer with the F1 cars unless you go on a curb or get on the power a little bit too early. It's just power sliding, but this was just natural oversteer at a high speed corner as the tires were starting to go off. So that was at the time it was frustrating because the car was oversteering quite a bit. I will say I was running like 7/6 wings, so the balance of aero was slightly in favour of oversteer. So I don't know whether I need to adjust my setup to accommodate that, but just going on a 2016 setup towards the back end of a stint, oversteer was quite tricky to manage. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see how that affects the car track to track, whether that's just a thing at Melbourne, whether that's just the way that I was working the setup, or maybe I was staying out too long on my tyres. But yeah, quite interesting to note that. But that has pretty much been everything in terms of the handling for F1 2017. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. I can only talk about handling at this stage of the cycle of the release. So there might be some things that I've forgotten or just didn't remember. And if you ask me questions about the handling, then that might spark up my memory again and I'll reply to you guys. So just handling I can talk about for now. Later on we can talk about career mode, we can talk about potentially new features or anything about the F1 game. So I'm really looking forward to when the game officially gets announced and when we can finally start playing it, because it's going to be a very exciting year for the F1 game franchise. Really excited for you guys to see what's in store, and I can't wait to get stuck in with videos, with career mode, with everything. It's going to be really awesome this year. If you have made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys for a brand new video very soon.